inside the air conditioning, and others out here in the heat. And in true Texas style, just like Southwest Airlines, everybody's going to have a first-class seat together in this garage. And here's the other thing. For as long as Greg Abbott is governor, there's a chance the power will go out in Texas and we won't have air conditioning, so let's get used to it right now, okay? This is our 5th visit to Amarillo, just since we launched this campaign in November. We can't get enough. We cannot get enough of being here, of meeting you, of listening to you, of the folks who've shown up literally every single time I've been here, and for those who are showing up for the very first time ever. We welcome you all. To the Democrats who are here, we're glad you came. For the Republicans, you are in the right place. To the Independents, we love you all. It's going to take all of us not only to win this election, but to make sure that we get this state moving on the right track. What do we do with this? All right, can you see me a little bit better now? Okay, there we go. So I'm glad that everybody's here. And thank you for bearing with us, given the temperature and the heat. This is old school Texas barnstorming, just like they did 100 years ago. No air conditioning required. Good people coming together on this glorious Friday in the greatest state in America. We're pretty lucky. Let me begin because far too often people in positions like mine are going to tell you everything that they are against or how bad the other people are. What if we did this? Just started something different and new here tonight. What if we started with what we are for? Okay? So let's try a couple of these on for size. When I think about what I am for in the state of Texas, I'm for every woman, every man who's ever worn the uniform of this country and been willing to put their lives on the line to defend this democracy here at home, to fight fascism abroad back in World War II, to do everything that this country has asked of them, and then to come back and support others who are now serving abroad, to support their veterans who are coming home tomorrow or the year thereafter. The Vietnam era generation in particular, who served in a war that this country did not understand, who came back not to thank you for your service and ticker tape parades, but at best to the indifference of a confused country who nonetheless got after it, raised their families right here in Amarillo, worked an honest day for an honest day's wage, helped to build up the civic life and democracy of the very country for which they fought. And when those veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan have talked about exposure to toxic burn pits, breathing in God only knows what, and that they're having a hard time breathing now that they're back at home, those veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange and watched and waited as this country took 40 years to treat that as a presumptive condition, those Vietnam veterans are first in line to fight for those veterans who are coming home right now. So to the veterans among us, know that you have our gratitude and our respect, and it goes beyond words. I want to make sure that the veteran here in Texas is able to sleep in her own home, under a roof, and not out on the streets. I just met an amazing woman who works for the city of Amarillo, specifically on reducing homelessness, including veterans' homelessness in this community. I want to learn from her track record of success and how we apply that across the other 253 counties in the state of Texas. I want to make sure that no veteran who served this country ever has to worry about a home where they can lay their head. I also want to make sure that for the current generation that we set up a toxic burn pit registry to connect them with the care that they need right now, not wait 40 years as we did after Vietnam. I want to make sure that we prioritize reducing veteran suicide, which is happening all too often in this state and across this country. And for every veteran who's approached me at a meeting like this and says, Beto, at the VA, whether here in Amarillo or up at the clinic in Dalhart, they're all too willing to prescribe me an opioid, to which I may become addicted, from which I may, as many tens of thousands of other Americans have, die. But what I really need for my post-traumatic stress disorder, for the symptoms of my traumatic brain injury, to be healthy and whole again, is access to marijuana or cannabis in the state. As governor, we're going to make marijuana legal in the state of Texas, and we're going to expunge the time for possession of a substance that's legal in most of the rest of the world today. At a minimum, we owe those who have served that much. I am for the school teacher, the school counselor, the school librarian. Trying to unlock a lifelong love of learning in those kids before her in that classroom. That teacher who is trying to stoke the curiosity of that kid so they can live to their full potential, fulfill their promise for themselves, for their family, but for all of us. We do that. There is no stopping her. The things that she's going to create and make better for the rest of this country. But right now in Texas, teachers are under attack. On average, the Texas school teacher is underpaid $7,500 a year against the average teacher nationally. Furthermore, y además, she has to prepare those kids not for that curiosity I just talked about, but a high stakes, high pressure, standardized test. If I were governor right now, I would cancel the SCAR test. So that she didn't have to work a second or a third job to make ends meet. I would treat her with the respect that she's owed and that she deserves. No more telling you what version of Texas history is okay and safe to teach. We want the full true story to be told, everybody's story. And the last thing I'll ever ask you to do is to turn in the parents of a transgender child for child abuse in this state and turn them over. I'm for the child in that foster care program right now. 32,000 of them in this great state, in the worst run foster care program, bar none, period, in America today. We lost the lives, ladies and gentlemen, of 100 children in our custody and care since the year of our Lord, 2020. These kids have been raped, they have been trafficked, they have been abused, and it has been on our watch. Governor Abbott has been warned repeatedly for 6 years by federal judge Jack. She said 6 years ago, Governor, these kids emerged from this program more damaged than when they went in. You must do something about it. January of this year, she said that problem has gone from bad to worse. And Governor, you want to take these kids away from their loving parents and turn them over to that system, as well as every other child in the household, to score political points with your base. It's immoral, it's unconscionable, and it's unacceptable to me and to all of us as Texans. We're going to fight for you, no matter how you are, no matter how God made you, no matter who you love, no matter where you're from. They'll find us, and they will not divide us. I'm for the person who grew up here in Amarillo, or in Hereford, or in Muleshoe, and wants to return to this community, to find a job, to be with their folks, to serve the community that nurtured them and raised them, but just cannot find that opportunity today. Maybe their town doesn't have broadband internet because half of rural Texas is not wired for speed today. Try finishing your education. Try finding a job. Try starting a business. Try getting what you grow and raise to market if you cannot get online. Try finding a date tonight if you cannot access those apps. I want to make sure that we invest in these rural communities, in the farmers and ranchers and the small business owners, in the independent school districts and those teachers, which are very often the largest employer. And I want to do this in a state that has lost 24 hospitals throughout rural Texas in the last 10 years. I want to expand Medicaid and bring $10 billion in to stand up these hospitals In a state that is 51st in the nation in access to mental health care, where folks all too often with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and clinical depression get arrested on purpose to be taken into the county jail where they're guaranteed at least some level of care, to the point that our county jails have become the largest provider of mental health care services in this state. I want to make sure that we fully fund access to therapists, psychologists, the treatment and the care that allows you to live to your full promise because you're healthy enough and well enough to do that. I am for the Texas woman who lives in a state that has among the highest rates of maternal mortality in the developed world. 3 times as deadly for black women in the state of Texas, because when you shut down every family planning provider in this state, not only is it impossible to get an abortion, try in some of these rural and remote counties to get a cervical cancer screening, or see a family planning provider, or see a provider of any kind in the least insured state in America. That's why when we win this election, every woman in Texas is making her own decisions about her own life. And we must be for the lives of these women. I am for every child who will be returning to every classroom in a matter of weeks. In some districts in El Paso, it's 8 days. That's when my 15-year-old, his 14-year-old sister, their 11-year-old brother returned to school in the El Paso Independent School District. 8 weeks removed from Uvalde, where 19 children were killed with an AR-15 whose high-impact, high-velocity round shreds everything inside of you, so that your parents can only identify your body by the shoes that you happen to be wearing. And nothing has changed to better protect those kids or their teachers before this next school year starts. Nothing's been done to listen to members of law enforcement who begged the governor not to sign permitless carry into law, which allows anyone to carry a loaded gun on our streets without a background check, without any vetting, without any training whatsoever. I want to make sure that we listen to gun owners and non-gun owners alike and prioritize the lives of our kids over the profits of the gun manufacturers, the NRA, and the political interests. We may not agree on everything, but I bet you most of us can agree on universal background checks, so if you want to buy a weapon, we make sure you're not going to hurt somebody else or yourself. I bet you we can agree on red flag laws, so that if you have a firearm and you're threatened to use it against your classmates, the people you work with, the woman that you're married to, we intervene before it's too late. I bet you, though, many of you may agree that we shouldn't have AR-15s and AK-47s in civilian life. Maybe not everybody else does, but maybe we can agree that at a minimum, we raise the age of purchase to 21. So that 18-year-olds. The things that we're for, protecting the lives of our kids, having the backs of our teachers, supporting our veterans, doing common sense, bipartisan things that move this state forward. That's what this campaign is about. That's really, at the end of the day, what Texas is about. What you see right now in your government, from your governor, the chaos, can't keep the lights on when the temperature drops, have to conserve energy when the temperature rises, can't produce enough power in the energy capital of the world to power this economy and make sure that we're competitive for the talent and the capital in the investment. The cruelty against the most vulnerable among us. The corruption of looking after your donors, the billionaires and the corporations at the expense of everyday Texans. And the incompetence of not being able to run the things that we count on in this state. That might be Greg Abbott, but that is not us. That is not the people of Texas. That is not Amarillo. We are better, and we will do better. Let me tell you this. I know it's been a long time since the last Democrat ran and won this office of governor. It happened to be the best one we've ever had, Ann Richards. I know that the odds can be seen to be stacked against us. Not only do we have the challenges that I just described, but we have people in power and in positions of public trust who hold office today who are choosing their voters instead of the other way around. It is harder to register to vote and to cast a ballot in this state than in any other in the union. Case in point, 95-year-old veteran in March tried to vote by mail in the midst of a pandemic that might very well have taken his life and had his ballot rejected not once, but 3 times. If anyone has earned the right to vote among us, it is that guy who in 44 landed on those beaches to fight fascism abroad, to defend this democracy here at home. 7 million of us didn't cast a ballot in 2020, though we were eligible to here in the state of Texas. I hope present company excluded. It's not that we lack love for our democracy, or that we're lazy, or that we're disinterested in the outcome of these elections. It's literally the way that those in power have tried to keep those out of power from ever having a voice in the future and the direction of this state. But lest you think this is impossible, let me lay this on you as well. As Texans, we're made to do big things, very often against great, seemingly impossible odds. Mention democracy. In 1923, the state legislature outlawed voting for black Texans. It wasn't count how many jelly beans are in the jar. It wasn't a poll tax. It wasn't a literacy test. It wasn't cite the Texas Constitution. It was literally, if you're African American, you cannot vote in the Democratic Party primary, the only primary that existed at the time. Dr. Lawrence Nixon, a black physician in El Paso, Texas, challenged the white primary law in Texas, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, won not once, but twice, signal victories that ultimately by 1944 integrated our elections and set the path for LBJ, the first Texas president to sign into law the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That moment in 65, where anyone, regardless of your race, your country of national origin, your gender, could participate in our politics and be counted in our elections, is really the first time this country became a democracy, and it only became that democracy because of the people of Texas. For those women who are facing an attack on your bodily autonomy and are being threatened with having people check your travel documents, if you're of childbearing age and you try to leave this state for another state that allows abortions, to have members of the state legislature already threatening companies in this state, if you pay for one of your female employees to leave Texas to make her own private health care decisions, we will charge you with murder. To deny the fact that the health of the women of this state is going to be compromised, that their lives will be lost. It can seem like an impossible task to overcome this, but let us remember, prior to 1973, abortion was outlawed in the state of Texas, and no one rode to our rescue from outside of the state. No one came in to save the day. Jane Roe, a Texas woman, is the Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade. Her 2 attorneys, Linda Coffey, who lives in Dallas, Sarah Weddington of Abilene, Texas, were her attorneys. They successfully pled her case before an all-male United States Supreme Court and won the victory that for half a century protected that right to make your own decisions about your own body. It was Texas women then, it is Texas women today who will overcome these challenges to ensure that we win. And for those who doubt and need evidence or proof, let me share this with you. More than 78,000 people have signed up to knock on doors for this campaign, to make phone calls, to write letters, to talk to their fellow Texans, to make sure that they're involved in this election. In fact, the very people targeted for voter suppression and voter intimidation are top on our list for doors to knock on, making them the margin of victory that we need on the night of November 8th. In addition, not that money is everything, but if you didn't see the news on Friday, we announced that we outraised Greg Abbott by $3 million. 500,000, half a million unique donations. Number one group of donors that we had, school teachers in the state of Texas. And lastly, Quinnipiac, which I'm told is the gold standard when it comes to political polling in this country, measured this race in December after we just got in, and they found us 15 points down to Greg Abbott. That looked like an impossible hill for us to climb at the time, for those who didn't believe it. Quinnipiac took a second look at this race a few weeks ago. We've cut his lead by 10 points. We're only 5 down. Today, connecting with the Texans will decide the outcome of this election. So, as we turn on the second microphone we have so that we can hear from individuals who want to ask questions, who want to share their ideas, who want to help me better understand Amarillo and the surrounding communities, I invite you, if you're not already part of this team, to join our effort as a volunteer. There are a number of people in yellow jackets who are going to raise their hands and their clipboards. On those clipboards, you can add your name and make a commitment to knock on the doors of those voters who will decide the outcome of this election. It will not be won by the candidate. It will not be won by my political party. It will only be won with and by and for the people of Texas. Listen, we could come up with the best TV ad in the world. Maybe you don't watch television. Maybe you don't follow us on social media. Maybe you never open up that piece of mail that I send to your house. But you'll never forget one of your neighbors, another human being, showing up at your door face to face, eyeball to eyeball, human to human, having a conversation about the future of this state. That, if nothing else, is going to get you out to vote. It'll get you out to vote for us. So if you're interested in volunteering, we'd love to have you on the team. Amarillo, thank you for coming out. We're looking forward to what you have to say. Cynthia Brunel, who's here in the black cap. If you raise your hand, she'll bring a microphone over to you, and we'll try to get as many voices into the conversation. I'll try to answer these as quickly as I can. I know that we're all losing body weight right now due to sweat pouring down our bodies. We got to get a cold beer in our system sooner than later. So here we go.
Noah, mic 2 is not on.
Yes, ma'am. Hello. Hi. My name is Tavia, and this is my first year voting.
First time.
And so the one thing that drew me here today was, like many other Texans, I'm 18 and on the verge of losing Medicaid. I also come from a single parent household where my mom works in a school in the cafeteria, has worked 2 jobs her whole life to support not only me, but my sister who I brought here today, who's still in high school. Now, she's 15, and these things concern us because I'm right now about to go to college, and I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for college and how I'm going to be able to pay for my medical expenses. In 2020, I got diagnosed with a condition called dysautonomia, and which affects 100% of my body. And some days I'm better than others. But overall, my medications cost even more than my tuition. And sometimes even Medicaid doesn't even want to pay for half of it. Sometimes I had to pay out of pocket. And it was helpful because after my dad passed, but now that I'm 18, I have to fend for myself. So I guess my question is, how for young Americans, or just for young Texans as well. Are we going to be able to fix this problem so that way we can get an education and also keep our lives?
Thank you for being here and asking such an important question. First of all, I think as we all listen and hear your story, I think everyone here feels the way I do, just extraordinarily proud of you for coming out here, for being courageous enough to share this, for everything you've accomplished thus far. I mean, you've only gotten started. We want to make sure that you continue to be as successful as you can possibly be. So how do we do this? You talked about your mom working 2 jobs. Simple idea, tell me if you agree. What if the minimum wage in Texas was no less than $15 an hour? So you work just 1 job, not 2 or 3 to make ends meet. What if, in addition to expanding Medicaid and bringing $10 billion more in a year, we reform the rules of Medicaid so that it fully covers things like your medication, or we get higher reimbursement rates in underserved, often rural communities around the state of Texas? What if we invested not only in K through 12, but we invested in all-day pre-K, freeing up parents to be able to go to work, finish their education, fulfill their potential? I just met 2 amazing people from the United Way who are working on a collaborative for daycare here in Amarillo. Much to learn from them. And then, if you're going to college, what if the state of Texas makes sure that those first 2 years are at no cost to you? It's a public institution, like a community college, getting your associate's degree. And then lastly, if you're in or pursuing one of these in-demand professions that we don't have enough people for, we are 20,000 nurses short, for example, in the state of Texas. We're losing school teachers and educators and counselors by the thousands in our school system. If you want to pursue those 2 jobs and come back and serve your community as governor, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that you do not take on any student loan debt. And if you have it, I will wipe it clear if we can to make sure that you can focus on getting ahead, being healthy, being well, and fulfilling your promise for yourself and for all of us. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
To your left.
Hi.
Hey there.
Awesome. 2 quick questions. Will you be planning to debate Abbott?
Yes, we've accepted every single debate invitation. He's accepted 0.
My other question is that if you debated, would you do it both in English and Spanish?
Absolutely. Listen, we are so blessed that so many of us come from countries around the planet. You look at Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America, more Vietnamese language speakers in that community than any other city on the planet outside of Vietnam. You look at the number of people who speak Spanish, not just in El Paso, but in Amarillo, in Dalhart, in Pampa, in Childress, in Boys Ranch. Every community that I have been to, I have met voters who ask me questions and want answers from me in Spanish. Y vamos a hablar sobre cada tema que es importante en cada comunidad, incluyendo la educación pública, los tipos de empleos y trabajos que tenemos, y la necesidad de ir a un doctor. Those issues, those 3 issues, great jobs, world-class schools, the ability to see a doctor are universal. Let's make sure we talk about them in English. Let's make sure that we talk about them and listen to people in Spanish as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for asking.
Behind you. Here we go.
Hi, Beto. My name is Arturo Aguin. I'm next generation small business owner. My parents have owned Grandma's Burritos for 16 years. Best burritos you want to buy tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Our number 1 worry right now is inflation and how meat prices and gas prices and everything is being affected right now. And so I just want to hear from you if anything help us with that situation. I mean, we've been lucky to be a really good restaurant. People love us, but we hope to have a better profit margin lately. In the last few months, we've been affected by the inflation in the whole state and the whole country.
Let me ask you really quickly to repeat the name of the restaurant.
Grandma's Burritos.
Grandma's Burritos. We're going to support this small business. We're going to be a tough customer because we come from El Paso, so we take our burritos very seriously, okay? So the question is, how do we support small business owners, especially at a time of rising inflation? How do we make it more affordable to raise your family here, to work, to go to school, and to create jobs for other people, right? That should be our top priority. Inflation going up nearly 10% in the state of Texas. I'll tell you right now, your largest driver of inflation in this state is Greg Abbott. And I'll tell you a few reasons that prove this. Your property taxes collectively have gone up $20 billion since this guy took office. That's an increase of 40%. Your utility bills, when he allowed the gas traders and the pipeline CEOs to steal $11 billion from us last February when people were freezing to death in their homes, the largest transfer of money in Texas history, he stuck us with the bill. On average, your utility bills in Texas have gone up $45 a month. That is just the average, and that is everyone. And then, for your restaurant, as you know, 2/3 of the produce that we eat, that you all serve in your restaurant, comes from the country of Mexico. When Greg Abbott, for political points and in a stunt, shut down all U.S.-Mexico trade, that produce rotted on our international bridges, sending the price of food, including what you all prepare and serve to your customers, through the roof. You all have heard of this liberal rag called the Wall Street Journal, right? Well, they talk about Greg Abbott's $5 avocados. That's not me, that's not a Democrat saying it, that's the Wall Street Journal. That's Sid Miller, the current agricultural commissioner, who is to the right of Attila the Hun, saying the same thing about Greg Abbott. So, what do? We bring down property taxes because you all are paying on that business and certainly on your homes. And if you're renters, you're doing the same through your rent. We bring those property taxes down in a number of ways. One, that Medicaid expansion, $10 billion coming into the state, you're no longer on the hook to pay for indigent health care in your counties. We reduce your bill that way. Two, when we support public school teachers, we up the proportion that the state funds. Right now, the state pays 40% of the freight for public ed. Home property taxpayers pay 60%. We're going to get back to 50-50, reducing the pressure on local property taxpayers. We're also going to make sure there is fairness in who's paying property taxes. In Tarrant County, Fort Worth, on average, appraisals went up 50%. Walmart's appraisals in that same county went down 6%. They can hire the attorneys and the lobbyists to argue their valuation. We're going to make sure corporations are paying their fair share in the state of Texas, to less than the share that you are paying in the state of Texas. Y por el último, we're going to reduce the cost of your utilities. Those $11 billion, it's not just a cute phrase to say that they were stolen from us. There is a state law that says, in times of emergency and a declared disaster, you cannot price gouge the people of Texas, and explicitly mentioned in that statute is fuel. Well, these energy traders, these pipeline CEOs, charged 200 times the going rate for the electricity companies and the utilities that were purchasing that fuel. Greg Abbott had them peg that price artificially high, turned around and took $1 million contribution from the CEO of one of those pipeline companies. We're going to fight to get those $11 billion back and return it to you, to your parents, to the ratepayer of the state of Texas. Thank you for being here. We'll see you for breakfast.
All right, we have time for 3 more questions. I'm right in front of you. Right.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Jay. I'm a middle school teacher here in Amarillo. And I know you briefly touched.
We love our middle school.
And I know you touched briefly about the events of Uvalde and various other gun control measures, but what are your plans for school safety on the state level? Other districts are looking at doing things as far as perimeter fences and things like that, but do you have anything specific for schools at the state level?
Question from our public servant, middle school teacher is, we talked about universal background checks, we talked about red flag laws, we talked about upping the minimum age of purchase for an AR-15 or an AK-47. What else can we do to protect kids, most importantly, and those teachers and support staff in these schools? First thing I'd do is listen to you. You're going to know your school better than I ever will. Where the vulnerabilities are right now that we can address. I mean, some of the things that we're learning as this report comes out from Uvalde about whether doors are locked or kept propped open, whether when the lock is broken, the work order is placed, and that work order is honored, and that work order is fixed. Whether when law enforcement show up on the scene, they try to open that door and get between that active shooter and the kids that he's shooting right now, or whether we wait more than 70 minutes to do a damn thing for those kids. We got to make sure that there's accountability and justice and transparency in this for those families in Uvalde who deserve justice, and for you and every other educator and child to make sure that it does not happen again. So I want to make sure that we do that. You know, the governor, at that press conference the day after, he talked about mental health care. The interesting thing is, the month before, he took $211 million out of the state's mental health care budget. We're already 51st in the nation. So if we want to get serious about that, I'm there. Let's expand Medicaid. Let's fully fund access to mental health care. Let's fund those emergency mental health care response teams in Uvalde right now. But if we have that conversation, do all those things, and fail to address the fact that an 18-year-old can walk in and buy 2 AR-15s, weapons originally designed for war, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and that is perfectly legal, though it is not okay in this state, then we have failed our kids. And listen, if there's anything I fear in this life, it is the judgment of my children. They are counting on us right now. They don't have a vote. They don't have a voice in this. We do. We better not fail them at this moment. So you got my support. Thank you for being here.
Same direction, right behind the gentleman.
Gotcha.
How are you, sir?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. I'm an Iraq war vet. I was over in Iraq. My question to you is, and I don't know how much of it is hearsay, but I know a lot. I don't know how many live, but I've heard of secession, Texas secession. Okay. I work for the government. I'm a mailman, so I have a lot of writing on whether we're a state or not. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to lose my VA benefits. I don't want to lose my federal job. My wife is a teacher. I guess my question to you is, how are you going to be bipartisan and work with the other side to keep us a state and just keep us from, spiraling into chaos?
It's a great question. This veteran asked about this idea that is gaining ground at the fringe and maybe more into the mainstream of the Republican Party in Texas today about seceding from the Union. This is not something that I read on the internet or that I picked up off somebody else's Twitter feed. The Republican Party of the state of Texas adopted officially a platform last month in Houston, Texas, which, among other things, says that the winner of the 2020 election is not the legitimate president of the United States. It describes, and this is a direct quote, homosexuality as an abnormal behavior. It is against marriage equality in this state, and it calls for potentially secession from the Union. Something I thought was answered in 1865 at Appomattox, but they want to try it again right here in our state. Sometimes we are tempted to laugh this stuff off because it can sound ridiculous. And this, I'm going to get to your question on this. If you asked me 2 years ago, would abortion be outlawed with no exception for rape or incest in this state? I'd say, I know people talk about that, but that's crazy, that's on the fringe. That will never happen. That has happened. Women are under attack in a way in this state that I couldn't believe. And if we think that it stops there, then the failure of imagination that allowed this to happen is going to ensure that the other things that they proposed, including from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, like outlawing contraception, or intimacy between same-sex partners, or marriage equality, all of which in his concurring opinion to Dobbs, he said is on the block, and I guarantee you There's an ambitious Republican legislator who's going to propose every single one of these things this next session. And if we laugh them off and don't take this threat seriously, then shame on us, because it will be on us. So the question is, there are some things that are deeply antithetical to who we are as Americans, who we are as Texans, and not just for those of us who are Democrats, to who we are as Democrats, that are being proposed by those who are in control of our government today. But there are others with whom we can have good faith conversations. And I know that because when I was working for you as a member of Congress on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I was a Democrat in the minority in a Republican majority institution. And we worked on expanding mental health care access for veterans who returned with an other than honorable discharge. But that bill that I wrote was worth all the paper it was written on and nothing more if I couldn't get it passed. So I sat across the table from a Republican colleague and I said, "Hey Mike from Colorado, here's my idea. I know you care about these OTH veterans as well, who are dying at twice the rate from suicide as the general veterans population. How about you join me on this bill?" And he said, "Beto, I like the idea. I like some of the particulars, but here's some changes I insist on if you're going to have my support." I accepted that. We found consensus. I even compromised, which is a four-letter word in American politics, but necessary for a functioning democracy. We got it passed 435 to 0 in the House of Representatives. We got it passed in the Senate, and you'll never believe who signed it into law: Donald J. Trump. So I will work with anyone, anytime, anywhere to advance the interests of this state, including you and other public servants who are out there working for us every single day. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
To your right. He's going to your right. There we go. I have time for two more.
Good evening. At the end of this year, Texas Tax Code 313 ends and sunsetted, which has allowed the huge investment of renewable energy in the state of Texas. What are your plans to revitalize that and expand it so that this part of the state continues to be revitalized and we continue to diversify our energy holdings?
Love this question. Listen, we're the energy leader of the world right now, and that's a pride of place that we will cede to nobody else. Primarily, at least historically, that's been oil and gas, which I am grateful for. It's secured the energy independence of this country from the rest of the world. No more wars to get our supply lines in check. I love the fact that I drove here in a Toyota Tundra, that what it burns came here from the state of Texas, as well as the jobs that come along with them. But the future is clearly pointed in one direction and one direction only. Some country and some part of some country is going to win that future. I'd rather it be the United States than China. And within the U.S., I would rather it be Texas. And what that means is that we've got to make investment, not just in the technologies and the innovation and the ingenuity around renewables, but in the hard infrastructure like transmission lines, to make sure that we're the global leader in wind, in solar, in hydrogen, in geothermal, in battery storage, and whatever else that we are going to come up with as a state that has to be reflected in our policies. And listen, no one has more to gain or to lose than the state of Texas. No one understands climate change better than this state. More rain dropped from the sky than ever has before in recorded history in North America in 2017 over Houston, Texas during Harvey, killing a lot of people, doing billions of dollars of damage. 10-year droughts in the Panhandle. Going to meetings in Glasscock, and a young farmer comes in and she says, "Well, my grandparents planted and grew, and my parents planted and grew. I'm planting and it no longer grows here anymore. Climate change isn't coming. Climate change has come and we are gone if we don't figure this thing out. Let us make sure that we are meeting the challenge of this moment, confronting climate change before it is too late, and creating the high-paying, high-value, high-skilled jobs that come with it. So yes, let's extend those provisions in the state budget within our tax code, and let's make sure that we're making additional investments to be the global leader for the next 100 years. Thanks for asking the question.
To your left. There we go. This is going to be our last question.
No pressure.
Okay, I'm a little nervous. I'm going to try to get my thoughts together. I am a teacher. Last year was my very first year. I taught high school English. And there were several instances last year where I was scared to recommend books to my students because of community response. And on another instance, I took my students to the library and I noticed I had a student sitting down not getting anything. And I said, hey, why aren't you getting a book? And this student was a trans student and looked at me and said, there are no books here that I identify with. She said that the only place that they can get books that they see themselves in is at the public library. And that was obviously upsetting. And I guess, my question is, we have the board versus PICO, which is supposed to stop school boards from being able to remove books from libraries based on ideals, beliefs, etc. And my question is, what can we do on sort of a large scale and also a small scale to help combat that, if that makes sense?
It makes total sense. I first want to thank you for wanting to enter this profession from which so many people are leaving right now at the toughest time to be a teacher. So thank you for that. In the category of failure of imagination, I failed to imagine that I would ever see state employees with hand trucks going into school libraries and carting off books that have been put on a banned list in the year of our Lord 2022 in the United States of America. But it's happening right now, and you ask what we're going to do about it. And the larger question about how we think about this. Think about the current governor, the way he governs, this race that he's running, and what it's based on. It is who you're supposed to be afraid of, who you're supposed to hate, who's supposed to be a threat to you and your family. Sometimes it's Mexicans and immigrants and the invasion that's coming across the border. Other times it's transgender kids. Sometimes it's gay people. They say that they're going to introduce a Don't Say Gay bill this next session. Other times it's our history and the full true telling of everybody's story in the state of Texas. We are not a people who were built on fear. We're not motivated and moved to do great things because we're afraid of something. We are an ambitious people who are aspirational, who want to do great things because we know we were made to do them. We're going to put in the hard work and the effort, but we are unafraid. That's how I think we are constitutionally wired in this state. We got to get back after that. And when we talk to people about that, not like you should vote for Democrats and not vote for Republicans or this person or that policy is a bad thing, but who are we at our core and what are our values and why should we be afraid to learn in a school? Isn't that what it's there for in the first place? I think we're going to win some people over, and if we'll listen to them about what's on their mind, what keeps them up late at night, and if they have a legitimate concern about something that's going on in their schools, let's make sure that we hear them out, invite them to the school board meeting, take part in your government, just like you are doing now. Lastly, I want you to know that I have your back. I'll fight for you every single day as an educator. I'll fight to make sure that we get our books back in our libraries, that we have academic freedom, that we're unafraid of our story as a state, and then we get back to the big things that should define us as Texans. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, Amarillo.